In November 1845, English Assyriologist Austen Layard arrived in Mosul, a town in modern-day northern Iraq. He was excellently fitted for the work of an explorer and excavator, strong, robust, determined, active, energetic, and inured to hardship by his previous travels in wild regions. Funded by Sir Stratford Canning, the British ambassador to Constantinople, his objective was to excavate Nimrud, a site down the river from Mosul that at the time he thought was Nineveh. After presenting his credentials to the local government and telling the locals that he was sailing downstream to hunt wild boars, he hopped on a raft he'd hurriedly built for the occasion and floated down the Tigris. Around 5 hours later he arrived at Nimrud, disembarked, and had a wander around. After a few days poking around, he set up camp. Over the course of his excavations he suffered various delays, mainly at the hands of the local authorities. The worst of it was over the summer of 1846 when he was completely stalled, but, after some negotiations he was able to get back to it. On November 1, 1846, he had his working parties start digging at a number of different places on the mound, including back in the trench marked J in the central area, where around the same time the year before, he'd found the remains of those two winged bull statues. Nothing of any interest was found there, so he had his men dig a trench behind one of the bulls and follow it along for several days. When it reached around 50 feet long, he almost gave up on the trench. He let the workmen continue with it, while he had business for a day back in Mosul, deciding that if they'd still found nothing, by the time he returned, that he'd give up on the trench. After giving his men instructions he galloped off for Mosul. He'd hardly gone far at all when, back in the trench, his workmen eventually found the corner of the 6-foot-length obelisk. On his return he and his men pulled the obelisk out of the trench using ropes, and stood it upright. This was later called the Black Obelisk of Shalmaneser. 3. If Austen Layard had given up on the trench, when it reached around 50 feet long, the Black Obelisk would not have been excavated. Like this, dramatic things happen sometimes in the world, and we should not forget that most of them are the result of persistence, not luck that comes by accident.